Hey everybody, Robert Garcia here from Nuke the Fridge. We're extremely excited to bring you some very cool video footage from our recent visit to LAIKA Stop Motion Animation Studios out in Oregon. They're the studio behind Paranorman, The Box Trolls, Coraline, Kubo and the Two Strings, and they're going to be coming out with their next animated film, Missing Link, April 12th, 2019. We were invited to check out the sets, the costumes, all of the puppets for the upcoming movie, and we got an exclusive behind-the-scenes look on how they put everything together. So check out the video, everybody. I'm sure you're going to like it. We're very excited to bring it to you. Enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Like this. You've been there before. Yeah. So the animator is reserved for this. But then, and again, feel free to take a look around the sun.
My set building experience, very small. I can see how insane.
Yeah, this one, and the closer you get the detail, the textures, it's just.
Yeah, go.
I really like the way that I feel like nothing. I really like the way that the colors mix together on all of these.
Yeah, it's the trick of when the director says I want a very colorful movie, no grades, and you're walking around, it's all very muddy. I have my business so the days of all these sets are very cool. As if clouds were there, like just flat light. You get that, like with a skyscraper picture, like you take a picture of them from there with their head popping in.
Yeah, it's a really good photo. It's a real good photo.
Yeah, so that's the actual set she's hanging on. That's what I figured. See it, Orlando, Dallas, which was 2. There they are. So that's that set piece right there. That's where the rest of the fan jam is right now. I love having a flex front and this front.
Can I be super nosy and just get my questions?
So much better.
Because when I was watching part of it, how does that happen?
Right.
Like, how do you make that happen?
Well, that's why, like, you know what, that the buttons are at the end of those films. I mean, there's only been one box for this. Like, so, like, we'll do, like, cool days and we show off. And we
I think you've got, like, casual...
Challenging. The big expansive sets are more challenging for the art department. So really, across the board, every sequence has its own set of challenges. Every set is every environment just has a new one. The art department and the art director are also the art director will work with the talk about its overall feel, and then they'll be like, okay, this is what Joe would like, this is what Steve would like, this is what Galaxy would like.
Yeah.
These variations.
Okay. Oh, okay.
What is that? Oh, that's just like some lighting, so it's reflected on camp, but the fire's gonna be
Right.
later.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That's a cool way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's there just because it happened.
No. Yeah.
It's all
So you
Yeah.
on a larger object, you actually get more.
Right. Yeah. Wow. the floor is probably my favorite part in the comics.
Train station in the footage that you
Did. No.
Well, there's landscape. So cool. Yeah. Well, you'll know it because like the town is all that. So it's
I can't
just like everything you're gonna see that's anywhere near this is all the
The skill like of the figurine, exactly.
That's crazy. Like the scale thing just throws me off so much.
It's funny because I deal with what you're experiencing right now. It's a very hard part of the job, and I deal with it all. What they said is so
Right.
and then
This is
they're
huge.
but I mean because like then they're like so we have to actually build.
Yeah.
Right? So then they're like, oh well this other set is big. I'm like, well now that's bigger than our building. Right. So
Right.
we have to change what you're thinking. I'm saying
Yes, yes, yes.
about scale.
Yeah.
And it's
Crazy.
So he had that look, he had that strong look that he wanted the character to have, not knowing that he would actually be able to land him with the voice. So, look at coincidence.
I think some of all that is iconic too, like, a lead male character, the female lead, there's going to be this Hugh Jackman fits that role in film. Oh, we want a strong leading man. Let's go to Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Oh, you have this idea in your head. So it's not that they're interchangeable by any means.
But often when you see animated,
I love that too. It's getting, the tools are getting so powerful, but to be able to walk in and actually get sort of hit by what you're looking at and the actual objects lit with light is, to me,
beautiful.
it's beautiful. Exactly.
So this is Lionel's apartment.
Can you get a picture of how it looks real? And I want to show it like.
Do you want me to put?
No, that's okay.
Yeah, the lighting is
Trying to get-
lighting's pretty
Will you take a picture of me?
Yeah.
Because you can see that it's just
Yeah,
like
okay, yeah.
any other beautiful like
Yeah.
scripting stuff. Wow.
Yeah. And it's just a little geeky kind of fun fact that we can't make one of anything, because if something is missing from a scene, you can imagine the whole floor would have to stop and wait for it. So we make every single thing you see. We make molds of and we make duplicates of, because it would kill us if we misplaced or lost something.
Things break as well.
There's an art, things break.
How many would you make?
It depends on what it is, but we can always make another. But there's always duplicates on hand. But you can imagine over a course of the show, there's thousands of props, so it can be like 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000. This is the clearing where Blake and Sir Lionel have their big meeting moment. So he's previously to this chased him through the woods, and now they're having this moment. So the director wanted it to be very sort of open, a bit less moody and mysterious, and a little bit more friendly for their introduction. And we built many of these woods. We built about seven units worth of this set, and this is all set up right now. It's partially for display, but also this is how we would start out on a unit, meaning we would try to shoot the largest establishing shot, and then we will break this all apart. There's probably 60 tables under here that all come apart in different configurations, leaving a channel for the animator to get to the puppets at times, and then it breaks apart and goes to different units. So,
How many people would build this?
there's 60 people tops in the art department at one time. I would say to put a set together like this, there might be 25 or 30 of them touching this set at some point. It's kind of fun to come out when it's full on and there's just people everywhere, crawling all over it, putting it together. But yeah, the reference was pretty easy. It's in Portland. It's my backyard is Forest Park, so I just
Is
take
this
a lot
what
of
you're
pictures.
shooting the film on?
It is, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's still, remember, it's all just still frames,
Stills,
all
yeah.
strung together. And those are very, those are very high quality for our needs. Yeah.
Are you walking, or like, is there holes, like, do people go, in order to, like, move the characters, like, how are you moving them when it's, like, when Link is by that tree line back there?
Right, we literally pull the tables out. So some of those tables are very small. They're only 2x2 or 2x4. So it creates a channel that the animator can walk up right up to it, or we split the set in half. We start with the establishing so that we can then digitally paint in the set as it was, undisturbed.
Well, every time we do that, we'll shoot a clean plate, usually a head plate at the beginning, once it's all dressed out, and then very carefully remove out. So we can have the animation and then a clean plate of the dressing, so we can overlay and then paint out all that. And that's why we shoot in camera angle order and not story order. Because as you can imagine, a set like this, some of the resets are pretty time consuming.
Right.
So we'll shoot everything from this side of the conversation, and then, as Nelson said, we can split the sets and give the animator what we call bounce units. So we don't have 90, we hit 97 active units on this show. We don't have 97 animators, we have 30. So what we try and do is have one set animating, one set that's being prepped, and then one set that's ready. So when they finish, they can bounce straight to the next one, because their target is 4.3 seconds a week of approved animation, of approved footage. And if they've got a really complex shot with multiple characters, that can come right down to 2-3 seconds. So their time is a huge commodity for us. So efficiency is with the build and all the pre-planning that Nelson does is a huge help to that, because we've definitely there's been instances in the past before we've done that turnarounds were just pretty brutal. So this really allows us to keep trucking as quickly as possible, which it's like a 92-week shoot. So we need to find those efficiencies because it takes a long time.
And some animators, if a sequence runs for a long time, will be out on a unit for 6 months. Just they come to work every day and they go to the same. It might be this one right here. They could be here for 6 months. Wow. This would be their world the whole time they're animating. And you can see that is the interior of the exterior cave entrance right over there.
I was totally expecting red cameras or Aries or surprised by that.
Yeah, it's just still frames.
Or even like a Hasselblad or something like that. Yeah. We used to shoot Mitchell with film cameras. Yeah. So I said, that shoots like 6 frames. Yeah, way beyond. Yeah. Yeah, we do have a Hasselblad, but it's just when we're shooting posters, large format. But it's evidence from these guys. And of course, because we're shooting so many files, 24 a second, but we're also shooting stereo, so it's double. Yeah. So those giant medium format files would kill us.
Yeah, they'd be insane.
Because of the processing.
Because that's what, 36 megapixels or 32 or something like that?
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's a lot.
You
can be sure it's a lot. Yeah,
so we can shoot this, and depending on the length of the shot, we can send it down our pipe, and we can be watching it in our theatre in 3D in about half an hour to an hour.
Oh, wow.
Stage. So we've got a pretty quick turnaround. So
rigging department is to give the animators the control and the ability to move puppets and props through space. This is a really great example of a scene from the movie where Mr. Lint was fighting with a Nessie creature. So we're going to comp Mr. Lint into a scene with, with waves and with a Nessie and a boat and things like that. But this is the rig that we used for that scene. We give the animators the incremental control through a series of winders and tracks. This is built on an XYZ Cartesian system, so that it's kind of like a big Etch-a-Sketch where the animator can kind of place the puppet anywhere in space, and then they can go in and then they can perform with pretty much very steady accuracy the performance on top of the rig like so. Here we have XYZ Cartesian with rotation here and then rotation here, and very often we've got these series of ball joints which are very similar to the ones that you see inside the puppet, just only bigger to carry the puppet around. You'll see that there's a lot of kind of mechanism here that you don't see in the final film. That's because all our work gets painted out in post, which is kind of a blessing and a shame in the same breath. Everything that you see here is designed and machined in-house. We design everything in Inventor, AutoCAD, and then we have a really extensive machine shop with 5-axis and 3-axis mills and EDM cutters and all sorts of laser cutters, water jets. So it's a real one-stop shop for delivering our infrastructure. What you also see behind Mr. Lint is bagpipes. We're also involved with creating the mechanisms for performing props. For this, we had 2 bladders that are controlled through a series of syringes that were placed underneath the deck. And then you see that there are these markings on the syringes that the animator is able to track the performance of the audio to the performance of the bladder. So this is their kind of markings that they're doing, very much like in an old style, like where you used to mark the tape on the audio. Mr. Lint is a kind of traditionally sized puppet. In the rigging department, we've rigged things like giant skeletons and mecha drills and all those kinds of things, really big scales. Mr. Link himself, he's pretty small relative to those, but he was kind of our heaviest main character that we've ever had. So he actually we needed more infrastructure to support his animation than that we've ever used before. If we take you over to here, this is the rigging department get involved with a lot of the specials, we call them. They're kind of the insert shots. They're the kind of the overscale. This is our first and probably last 300% butt piece that we've ever produced in the studio. So this is Mr. Lint. He's bending down and his pants split open. So this is a special created for that. You can see that all the fabric is rigged on the very similar winder systems that we rigged to the puppets to give the animator incremental control as they're peeling those panels away. And then they have the ability to move the butt piece into position through this winder back here, and then get some follow through on the fur here. So the fur is armatured so they can move and they can get that kind of like follow through there. And these tennis balls, those are just to keep the animator's eyes safe. We do a lot of these kind of close-ups. All our hands are kind of like 200% versions that we can kind of so we can punch in and we don't kill the scale by getting things like brush strokes or anything like that popping too much. Next to the huge butt, we have Alda Yeti. Now, Alda Yeti was an interesting puppet. You couldn't see her legs. This was a special sculpt that was produced just for her to sit down. As you can see, the animator wasn't able to get in there and actually push the knees and the thighs around. So she's more or less completely controlled externally. If you see under here, there's quite a few axes that are being driven that are controlling the knees and the thighs. So I can kind of like push these around, and you can see. So it's a little bit like, you know, the Muppets, but in a mechanical, you know, we have our, instead of having a puppeteer underneath, we put our rigs and then give the animator the access to push these rigs around. So we have them on the knees and the thighs and on the pelvis as well. And then behind her, we have these things called jetpacks, which you can see here, which are 2 turnbuckles that you wind them together inwards, and the puppet will lean forwards, reverse it, will lean backwards, and then if you alternate them, they'll go side to side. So you can see I can push this puppet around without actually touching her body. And this was developed for Monkey on Kubo. Monkey had a lot of fur, and we really try and move away from that kind of traditional stop-motion boiling effect that you see. So this really gives us the ability to kind of give a more naturalistic approach to our animation. It also gives us what the animators call the invisible increment, which is the increment that's so small that you can't perceive it frame to frame until it stacks up and you see a run of frames. This is the same kind of thing here, just a remote version. So if we have a character that's sitting, like as we did in the stagecoach, or up against a sofa or something like that, this is a really good way of directing that animation. And we send these chords through under the set, and then the animator doesn't have to move around.
Ollie's team, they're a bit of a victim of their own success with this, because, as you said, you know, these jetpacks were developed for Monkey, so that wasn't for every animator, it was just for a specific puppet. But then the animators talk, and they show each other what they've got and how cool it is, and because really subtle animation can be it definitely is the hardest. So it gives an extra level of control on that. So it went from a couple of those on Kubo to every puppet for all 31 animators on this show. So.
And we build these bespoke to every puppet that you see, and it's a really good point in terms of in the way that we approach challenges is that we'll very often find ourselves cornered by a challenge, and we'll have to kind of think our way out of it. But then the things that we learn from that actually get applied to a lot of different areas. This guy's got.
And it's nice to be able to go from show to show with these things. You know, usually you work on a film, you come in, you make a movie, and everyone scatters. You know, you kind of one and done. But we've been lucky enough to be here since Coraline. So with that, there's been a shorthand that I've developed within. Usually, you know, a film department will stay within their own lanes about how to develop a prop or a puppet or some art department or some RP work. Whereas now it's like we get these problems and we sit down as a group, and the departments really.
Yeah, there's a great muscle memory.
Yeah, there really is. And
between the
things
departments.
that I was saying earlier, all the departments have now got RP machines, and just because it's that they've grown together as departments, so it's not like it's just staying in your lane. It's very much a collaborative.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of blurred lines, which makes things really hard to manage. But you can actually get a lot better product out of it when you start merging and having more ambiguity between.
There's a lot more coordinators.
There's a lot more coordinators. Yeah. This is a 600% mouthpiece. This was developed because we had a shot of the interior of the mouth, so the camera was behind here looking through the mouth back at Lionel. Lionel was achieved in a comp, so we shot him separately, but then we produced this because it would have taken a lot to produce a camera and still hold the resolution and still hold the focus on the small mouths that you've seen in there. So we put the camera inside and we developed this in previs first, then we produce a cardboard cutout version to check all our scales are correct, and then we produce this using, these are printed teeth and gums, and then we have a printed tongue that then gets cast and made into silicon, and then each piece then gets rigged independently so we can get a lot more subtlety. So you can get the jaw is able to move up and down, and you can see that the cheeks are stretching with it. Actually, Lionel kind of has his cane up inside the gum of Mr. Link in this scene, so we actually had to independently rig the some stretch into the cheeks as well. And then we have the tongue has kind of 6 actuators on it to get a performance like that. It's very much like in kinship to that that classic shot of looking at Steve Martin in Little Shop of Horrors. Has that kind of grotesque, kind of icky feeling to it. So yeah, you can see that the rigging department is very much like a hybrid of all these different disciplines, and sometimes you'll be working in CAD one day, but next day you'll be working with the needle and thread, and any kind of solution is kind of on the table. As long as you're sticking to the parameters of the shooting process, anything's a go really.